She was 39, world famous, and about to disappear so completely that people are still searching for her right now, almost 90 years later. Before that, she'd already crossed the Atlantic alone, broken 7 records, and turned her face into one every American recognized on sight. So in 1937, she went after the one flight nobody had ever pulled off, the whole planet, the long way, right along the equator. Then, less than 1,000 miles from the finish line, a crackle of static, a voice, and then nothing? 9 ships, 66 planes, 250,000 square miles of open ocean. They found exactly nothing. Almost 90 years later, there are 3 real theories about what happened to her. And we mean real, not internet rumors. One's backed by hard science, one's backed by actual physical evidence, and one, the one you've probably already heard, we're about to prove is flat out false. Stick around. But first, rewind 60 years before any of that, to a stubborn kid in Kansas who point blank refused to sit still. Atchison, Kansas wasn't ready for a kid like this. Amelia Earhart broke the rules for little girls before she could even spell aviator. Born July 24th, 1897, she grew up mostly with her grandparents, proper, comfortable, and completely unequipped to handle her. Other girls got dolls. Amelia got a rifle, a barn full of rats to hunt, and a scrapbook stuffed with women doing jobs men said they couldn't. She and her sister rigged a homemade roller coaster off the toolshed roof. Naturally, Amelia demanded to go first. It ended with a split lip and a ruined dress. Her exact words afterward? "It's just like flying." In 1908, she finally saw a real airplane at the Iowa State Fair and couldn't have cared less. A thing of rusty wire and wood, she called it later, and looked not at all interesting. 10-year-old Amelia was not impressed. Money was tight. Her father drifted from railroad job to railroad job, and the family packed up and moved more times than anyone could count. Through all of it, her mother Amy pushed something unusual for the era. Real, stubborn independence for both her daughters. By her teens, Amelia's bedroom wall wasn't covered in movie stars. It was covered in newspaper clippings of women breaking into law, medicine, engineering. Nobody in Atchison had any idea. This restless kid was going to vanish one day, trying to fly around the entire planet. By 1917, she was 20 years old, working as a nurse's aide in Toronto, tending to Canadian soldiers shipped home from the trenches. What she saw in that hospital never really left her. It also taught her something. Life was short, so why waste it being careful? It was in Toronto, too, that she first watched military pilots training overhead and felt something click into place. "I did not understand it at the time," she admitted later, "but I believe that little red plane said something to me." Fast forward to December 1920, an airfield in Long Beach, California. A pilot offers her 10 minutes in the sky. She says, "Yes." Those 10 minutes did it. "By the time I had got 200 or 300 feet off the ground," she said, "I knew I had to fly." There was just one problem. Flying lessons cost $600. So she drove trucks, took photos, typed letters, whatever paid. Her instructor was Netta Snook, one of the only women in the country teaching anyone, man or woman, how to fly. Within months, she chopped her hair short like the other pilots and bought her own second-hand biplane, bright, unmistakable yellow. She called it the Canary. In 1922, she flew it to 14,000 feet, straight into the record books. Through the rest of the 1920s, she flew whenever she could afford it and worked whenever she couldn't. First in California, then Boston. She joined the American Aeronautical Society, wrote newspaper columns about flying, slowly, without meaning to, became a name people in aviation knew. Then, April 1928, a phone call that would change absolutely everything. Would she like to fly across the Atlantic Ocean? Here's the catch. She wouldn't actually be flying it. The Fokker Friendship just needed a woman on board. For the photos. Amelia almost turned it down flat. Being a passenger, she said, felt like a sack of potatoes. False advertising of everything she'd worked for. She said yes anyway. Her logic? If the flight worked, it would crack the door open for every woman who flew after her. On June 17, 1928, Friendship lifted off from Newfoundland and flew 20 straight hours through fog toward the coast of Wales. The moment they landed near Bury Port, reporters swarmed the plane. Amelia hadn't even climbed out of the cabin yet. She'd done almost nothing but sit there and log the data. It didn't matter. Overnight, she was the most famous woman in America. The papers nicknamed her Lady Lindy after Charles Lindbergh, a comparison she found half flattering, half annoying. The fame arrived instantly and enormously. The hard part was figuring out what on earth to do with it. The man behind that Friendship flight was George Putnam, publisher, publicist, and a guy who saw a much bigger opportunity in Amelia. He booked her a lecture tour, ghostwrote, and edited her first book, and turned her into something close to an American brand. Amelia set one hard rule. She'd only endorse what she actually believed in. Not for money, ever. She used the spotlight to push commercial aviation and women's rights and helped launch a brand new group for licensed women pilots only. That group, the 99s, started in 1929. It's still going, still supporting women pilots nearly 100 years later. Putnam proposed, repeatedly. Amelia turned him down for years. She wasn't about to trade her independence for a wedding ring. When she finally said yes in 1931, she handed him a letter on their wedding morning. It laid out her terms. "I shall not hold you to any medieval code of faithfulness," she wrote, "and I must exact a cruel promise. Release me. If we find we cannot be happy." For 1931, that's not really a marriage. That's a business deal between equals, which, honestly, is exactly what she wanted. Putnam became her manager, her agent, her loudest promoter. She kept flying, faster planes, longer distances, higher stakes. Word around the aviation world was that her greatest flight, the one that would finally silence every doubter, still hadn't happened yet. By 1932, plenty of people still called her a lucky passenger, not a real pilot. Amelia decided to shut that argument down for good. The plan: fly solo across the Atlantic in a single-engine Lockheed Vega, the exact ocean Lindbergh had crossed 5 years before. May 20th, 1932. She takes off alone from Newfoundland with a thermos of soup, a small logbook, and nothing else to lean on. Hours in, ice starts building on the wings. Then the altimeter dies completely. Now she's guessing her altitude over Black Ocean. As if that weren't enough, a cracked exhaust manifold starts spitting flame right next to the fuel tank. Then a violent thunderstorm hits. For hours, the little plane gets thrown around by wind she can't even see. Almost 15 hours in, running low on fuel, she finally spots land and puts the shaking plane down in a pasture. A startled farmhand in Derry, Northern Ireland, asks if she's come far. "From America," she says. That's it. That's the whole answer. She'd just become the first woman, and only the second person ever, to fly solo nonstop across the Atlantic. President Hoover gave her a gold medal. Congress gave her the Distinguished Flying Cross, the first time a woman had ever received one. Nobody was calling it luck anymore. Amelia Earhart had just proven herself one of the best pilots alive, full stop. But for a woman who lived for the next impossible thing, even this was only the warm-up. Between 1932 and 1935, Amelia just kept setting records: distance, speed, altitude, chipping away at what people thought was possible. January 1935. First person ever to fly solo across the Pacific, Honolulu to Oakland. Nobody had done it, not even close. That same year, she flew nonstop from Mexico City to Newark. Another first, another headline, another door kicked open. In 1935, Purdue University brought her on as a visiting faculty member, counseling women students, consulting on their new aeronautics program. Purdue also helped fund something bigger, a brand new twin-engined Lockheed Electra built for exactly one thing: surviving long, dangerous distances. She called it her flying laboratory. Extra fuel tanks, the latest radios, every navigation tool money could buy in 1936. With a plane like that, one idea kept pulling at her: the flight nobody, man or woman, had ever actually finished. Not over the poles like some had tried. The long way, straight around the equator, the widest possible route. That meant almost 29,000 miles, ocean, jungle, desert, with barely any room for a single mistake. At 39, most pilots her age were slowing down. Amelia was just getting started on the biggest thing she'd ever attempt. She also wrote 2 best-selling books and used the money to fund the planes and the ambition to match. Reporters kept asking if she felt afraid. Her answer never changed. The most difficult thing is the decision to act. So she started assembling the team and the plan for the flight that would define her, and in the end, finish her. For a flight this dangerous, she needed the best navigator alive. She found him in Fred Noonan, a veteran of both the seas and the sky. Noonan had mapped Pan Am's Pacific routes and survived 2 separate shipwrecks. At this point, open ocean didn't scare him much. Her technical advisor, a veteran stunt pilot, spent months tearing into the Electra's engines, checking every system twice. The plane got stripped of anything non-essential and reloaded with extra fuel tanks, life rafts, emergency rations. No wasted weight. Amelia even studied Morse code late into the night. She never fully mastered it. That gap would matter more than anyone realized. She and her technical advisor argued over one thing: a trailing antenna. Amelia wanted it gone. Less weight, she said. At the time, it seemed like a minor call. Looking back, some think it may have helped doom the entire flight. Back in New York, Putnam handled logistics, fuel caches, permits, press coverage, across a dozen countries on 3 continents. By March 1937, everything was set. Amelia, Fred, her technical advisor, and 1 more crewman boarded the Electra in Oakland. The plan? Fly west first, Hawaii, then across the Pacific, then all the way around back home from the other side. It should have been the first leg of a triumph. Instead, it turned into the first of 2 false starts. The Electra made it to Honolulu safely on March 18, 1937, refueling for the long Pacific crossing still ahead. 2 days later, March 20th, the crew boarded again for the next leg, toward tiny Howland Island, way out across the ocean. As the heavily loaded plane picked up speed down the runway, something went wrong. A tire? A wheel strut? Nobody could agree exactly what. The Electra swerved hard, ground-looped, and skidded across the runway in a shower of sparks and torn metal. Somehow, nobody was hurt. The plane wasn't so lucky. A crumpled wing, a destroyed propeller, badly damaged. Just like that, the world flight was over before it really started. The Electra went back to California by ship, in pieces. Reporters floated pilot error. Amelia took responsibility publicly, but never fully explained what she thought had actually happened. Privately, she was devastated. Within weeks, though, she was already planning attempt number 2. flying the opposite direction this time. The delay had shifted the seasonal winds. New plan: fly east first, across the Atlantic, then Africa, then Asia. Her technical advisor sat this one out. Fred Noonan would stay on as navigator for a second attempt that was about to get much riskier. May 21st, 1937. The repaired Electra slips quietly out of Oakland. No fanfare this time. Heading for Miami, then east. From Miami on June 1st, Amelia finally announced publicly what had really been a quiet test flight. The world attempt was back on. She and Fred flew to Puerto Rico first, then island hopped down the coast of South America toward Brazil. In Venezuela, they refueled at a remote oil camp airstrip hacked out of the jungle. Mosquitoes and heat their only company. By June 7th, they'd reached Natal, Brazil, the easternmost tip of South America, ready for the long jump across the Atlantic. The Atlantic crossing itself, 13 hours to St. Louis, Senegal, went smoothly. A rare, easy stretch in an exhausting trip. From West Africa, they pushed on across the continent, through Chad, Sudan, Eritrea, fighting heat, sandstorms, and a plane that was starting to strain. In Karachi, Pakistan, Amelia became the first person ever to fly nonstop from the Red Sea coast all the way to India. Then Calcutta, then Rangoon, straight into brutal monsoon weather, rain hammering the Electra's thin aluminum skin for hours on end. Fred's celestial navigation kept them on course even when the landmarks disappeared completely under storm clouds. Local papers along the route treated her arrival like a state visit. This was still one of the most watched flights on the planet. Fred kept his own private log the whole way, tracking headwinds and drift, adjusting course by hand-calculated degrees, hour after hour. By late June, they'd crossed a dozen countries and 2 oceans. Only the biggest ocean of all was still waiting. From Rangoon, it was on to Bangkok, then Singapore. The heat, the humidity, the constant repairs wearing down both pilot and plane. In Bandung, in the Dutch East Indies, instrument trouble grounded them for several frustrating days of fixes. Amelia got sick during the delay, dysentery most likely, but pushed through rather than lose any more time. By June 27th, they'd reached Darwin, Australia, where they made one small fateful call, leaving the parachutes behind. Over open ocean, they figured, a parachute would only delay the inevitable. Grim math, but math they trusted. On June 29th, 1937, they landed at Lae, New Guinea, 22,000 of their planned 29,000 miles done. Only one leg left. But it was the hardest one, 2,500 miles of open Pacific to a speck called Howland Island. Howland was so small and so flat that finding it without modern navigation bordered on a coin flip. The Coast Guard cutter Itasca sat offshore, ready to guide the Electra in by radio the moment they got close. In Lae, Amelia and Fred spent 2 days resting, checking the plane, and recalculating fuel for the brutal final leg. Locals and journalists there remembered her as tired but resolute, determined to finish exactly what she'd started. The morning of July 1st, mechanics gave the Electra one last inspection. Engines, fuel lines, radio gear, all checked twice. Fred spent the evening plotting a careful celestial course, working around the tiny island's position and the expected winds. They loaded roughly 1,100 gallons of fuel, nearly everything the plane could carry, for an 18-hour flight. The night before departure, Amelia sent a short cable to George Putnam. Calm, practical, not a hint of dread in it. 10 a.m. local time, July 2nd, 1937. The heavily loaded Electra roars down the Lae runway. People on the ground held their breath. The overloaded plane barely cleared the trees at the end of the strip. Ahead of them, 2,256 miles of open Pacific, aiming for a target smaller than most city parks. The flight plan called for radio check-ins through the night, coordinated with the Itasca waiting near Howland. For the first several hours, everything sounded routine. Position updates, weather notes, steady engine reports. But as dawn approached on July 2nd, the weather turned, and something about the radio traffic started to feel off. What happened over the next few hours would become one of the most picked apart, most argued over mornings in aviation history. At dawn, the Itasca started broadcasting nonstop, trying to help guide the Electra in toward Howland. Around 6:45 a.m., a broken transmission comes through from Amelia. Cloudy weather, and she can't hear their signal clearly. At 7:42 a.m., a clearer message. We must be on you but cannot see you. Gas is running low. The Itasca pumps a thick column of smoke into the sky, hoping she can spot it against the clear ocean horizon. 7:58 a.m. Amelia radios again. She can't hear the ship's voice at all now. Just static. Just silence. The Itasca scrambles through every frequency they've got. Nothing works. The Electra's receiver just isn't picking them up. 8:43 a.m. One final, clearly received transmission. We are on the line 157337. We will repeat this message. That line, a navigational bearing running straight through Howland Island, is the last confirmed word anyone ever heard from the Electra. For over an hour, the Itasca's crew scans the horizon with binoculars, certain the plane has to be close. It has to be. No more transmissions come, no plane appears. The Pacific gives back absolutely nothing. Fuel math says the Electra could have stayed airborne a little longer. Maybe another hour, maybe less. Somewhere near that bearing line, or maybe nowhere close to it. Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan simply vanished. Some historians think the Electra flew close to another hour past that last transmission, searching blind for land. Others point out something worse. Without a working antenna, Amelia may never have known how close her signals actually were to getting through. Either way, by mid-morning on July 2nd, 1937, the most famous aviator in the world had gone completely, permanently silent. Aboard the Itasca, officers refused to accept it. They kept transmitting anyway, hoping for one more reply that never came. Amateur radio operators across the Pacific, even back in the mainland U.S., later reported picking up faint, garbled signals. A few sounded like a woman's voice, weak and exhausted, giving a position. Most investigators eventually wrote them off as false. Within hours, the news reached George Putnam in California. Publicly, he refused to believe his wife was gone. She has a great deal of confidence, you know, he told reporters. I have a lot of confidence in her too. The Navy and Coast Guard started mobilizing the largest air and sea search in American history up to that point. 9 ships, 66 aircraft, eventually combing over 250,000 square miles of open Pacific. For 17 days, the world waited for news that never came, hoping against odds that kept getting worse. The battleship USS Colorado launched scout planes to check nearby islands, including one small uninhabited spot called Gardner Island. Pilots flying over Gardner reported signs of recent habitation. No wreckage though, so they didn't land. They just kept moving. The carrier USS Lexington and its escorts searched a massive grid west and south of Howland for days straight. No debris, no oil slick, no wreckage of any kind anywhere across the entire search area. On July 19, 1937, the U.S. government officially declared Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan lost at sea. Putnam kept funding private searches for years after that. He never really let himself close the book on it. The disappearance made front-page news around the planet, and the questions it raised are still open today. In the decades since, three main theories have gone head-to-head, trying to explain that July morning. Some of that evidence is solid, some is pure speculation. And one theory we're going to show you just isn't true. Let's start with the one the US government has stood behind for almost 90 years now. Theory 1, crashed and sank. The official position, and still plenty of researchers say, the simplest, most likely answer. The Navy's official read was simple. The Electra ran out of fuel hunting for Howland and went down into the ocean. Fred's navigation was excellent, but Howland is tiny, and ocean currents could easily have nudged their actual position off. Cloud cover that morning could have hidden the island's low profile from view, even if they were genuinely, agonizingly close. Radio problems made it worse. The Electra could apparently transmit fine, but often couldn't receive incoming voice at all. Some researchers point straight at that missing trailing antenna, pulled before the flight, as the reason reception got so bad. If the plane ran dry before spotting land, it likely ditched gently on the surface, then sank fast in deep water, and the ocean floor near Howland drops to over 16,000 feet, some of the deepest water anywhere in the Pacific. Modern deep-sea searches, including sonar runs in 2019 and the 2024 Deep-Sea Vision expedition, have combed this seafloor hard. One 2024 sonar image that looked exactly like a downed plane turned out on closer inspection to be an ordinary rock formation. What makes this theory strong? It doesn't need any missing evidence, just physics, fuel math, and a very large, very indifferent ocean. What makes it shaky? The search area is enormous, and huge stretches of that seafloor still haven't been mapped even now, until sonar actually finds a wreck, or the ocean finally gives up what it's hidden for 90 years. Call this one unproven, not disproven. After decades of searching, though, still nothing. No confirmed wreckage of the Electra has ever turned up on the ocean floor. Theory 2 points somewhere else entirely. 400 miles southeast of Howland, to a tiny coral atoll now called Nikumaroro. In 1940, a British colonial officer found a partial human skeleton there, along with a woman's shoe and a sextant box. The bones got shipped off for examination, measured carefully, and then, somehow, lost completely before modern testing ever happened. Only the old written measurements survived. In 1998, forensic anthropologists went back over those numbers with modern statistical methods. Their finding: the bones were more consistent with a woman of Amelia's height and background than with almost anyone else in the comparison group. Since 1989, a research group called Tigger has made dozens of trips to Nikumaroro, hunting for more evidence. They've pulled up fragments that appear to match a woman's cosmetic jar, a pocket knife, and pieces of aircraft-grade aluminum sheeting. Here's the part that really stops people. For several nights after the disappearance, Pan Am radio stations logged faint distress signals on the Electra's exact frequency. If those signals are real, it means the plane, or at least its radio, survived on a reef for days after going down. More recently, satellite images picked up a strange shape sitting on the island's lagoon floor. Researchers nicknamed it the Taraya object. A Purdue-backed expedition, honoring Amelia's own ties to the school, went out to investigate the anomaly firsthand. So far, it's defied a clean answer. Not obviously wreckage, but not obviously just coral either. If Amelia and Fred really did reach Nikumaroro, this theory says they survived as castaways before eventually succumbing to thirst or illness. Theory 3 is the wildest one, that Amelia and Fred were captured by Japanese forces and died as prisoners. Some versions go even further, claiming she was secretly a spy, sent to photograph Japanese military buildup across the Pacific. This theory exploded in 2017 when a documentary rolled out an old photograph as supposed proof. The photo, pulled from U.S. government archives, showed a group of people on a dock that some viewers thought looked like the missing pair. Within days, independent researchers, including a Japanese military history blogger, traced that exact photo to a completely different source. Turns out, it had been published in a Japanese travel book back in 1935, 2 full years before Amelia's flight even took off. The documentary's headline piece of evidence got quietly, thoroughly debunked in about a week. There's no credible physical evidence, anywhere, tying Amelia Earhart or Fred Noonan to Japanese custody on any island. Historians who've combed the region's wartime archives have found 0 Japanese military or diplomatic records backing this claim up. And yet, the story keeps circulating online and in pop culture, a myth that just refuses to die. We're including it here not because it's true. It's not. But figuring out exactly why a myth falls apart is its own kind of useful. Whatever really happened in those final hours, it never once diminished what Amelia Earhart had already accomplished. She proved over and over that women could master machines and distances the world had decided belonged to men only. The 99s, the group she helped found, is still running today, supporting thousands of licensed women pilots worldwide. Purdue University, where she once counseled students, still honors her with an aviation technology building that carries her name. Generations of female pilots and astronauts have named her as the reason they first believed a career like that was even possible. Her childhood home in Atchison, Kansas, is a museum now, preserving the exact rooms where a restless girl first dreamed about flight. In 1963, she was posthumously inducted into the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Her books and letters, still widely read, show a woman who valued curiosity and courage a lot more than comfort or safety. Adventure is worthwhile in itself, she once wrote, a line explorers and dreamers still quote today. Her younger sister, Muriel, spent decades quietly answering letters from school kids who wanted to know if Amelia was ever coming home. Today, full-scale replica Electras and museum exhibits let new generations get close to the plane that vanished, closer than anyone ever thought they would. Her actual leather flight jacket and goggles are preserved at the Smithsonian, worn, faded, and unmistakably hers. George Putnam didn't remarry for almost 4 years. He spent much of the rest of his life defending her memory. Amelia Earhart disappeared as a mystery, but she's endured as something else entirely. One of history's clearest examples of pure courage. Nearly 90 years on, the question that gripped the world in 1937 still doesn't have a definitive answer. In 2025, a Purdue-backed research team went back to Nikumaroro to take another look at that Taraya object. Sonar and satellite imaging keep getting sharper, narrowing the search, even as the Pacific keeps holding on to its secrets. Every expedition comes back with fragments, more questions, and cautious hope. Still no conclusive, universally accepted proof. Deep-sea tech keeps improving too. Autonomous submersibles can now map seafloor terrain nobody could reach even a decade ago. Every couple of years, a new claim, a new photo, a new sonar blip reignites hope that this thing might finally get solved. Until then, Amelia Earhart stays exactly where she left us, somewhere past the horizon, still daring anyone to go look. Maybe that's part of why this story refuses to fade. A woman who chased the horizon, and a horizon that never quite gave her back. So, what do you think actually happened to Amelia Earhart that July morning, somewhere over the endless Pacific? Crashed and sank, stranded as a castaway, or something nobody's fully figured out yet. The ocean isn't talking. Not yet, anyway. If this dive into one of aviation's biggest mysteries hooked you, hit subscribe. Clue series covers the true stories history never quite closed the book on. Thanks for flying with us today. We'll see you in the next mystery.